night he was elected president, we were all down in the armory, down in Hyannis. And the armory was filled with people. And of course the counting was different in those days, and it was a little bit iffy. And the whole Kennedy family was gathered in the compound. They were all there, including Jack. And the armory was just filled with people, including ourselves.
You know, we grew up with that anti-Catholic sentiment that existed in many parts of the country. So we had a real love, affection for President Kennedy and his candidacy, and the whole city was just euphoric when he won. I mean, I can still see and hear the people cheering in the streets when the news came that President Kennedy was elected President of the United States. It was like a major barrier in America had been eliminated. It had been torn down. People just felt overwhelming pride, particularly Irish Catholics, which my family, of course, was, and most of the people around this neighborhood of South Boston was.
And I can assure you that every degree of mind and spirit that I possess will be devoted to the long-range interests of the United States and to the cause of freedom around the world.
We had so much hope in him, and he was a hometown person. He even had that real Boston accent, and I think most of us loved to hear that. And I think we're kind of proud when the rest of the country made fun. It was something very special, and it made him much more ours.
In those days, you know, when you went around as a police officer, particularly in the neighborhood that I served in, when you went into someone's home for one reason or another, there was always a picture up in the mantle. You had the Pope, Kennedy, and Jesus. So he was in that category, you know, with the Pope and Jesus.
You know, I jumped to November 22nd, 1963. I was in the Army at the time, stationed in Maryland. And when we heard the news, it was devastating. The whole base was shut down. Security was extraordinary. A number of us, this was right outside of Washington, D.C. A number of us were taken to Washington, D.C.
When Jack was killed, I happened to be in the Herald Traveler newsroom, 1:30 in the afternoon. And we have a room in the newsroom, it was called a teletype room. It's just filled with 15, 20 teletypes. When it happened, all of a sudden, ding, 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 all the teletypes started going at once. It was the most frightening thing I ever heard, because I was taught as a kid that the AP's highest service was called EOS, Extraordinary Service. They had one when World War I ended. They had another one when World War II ended. They had another one when Franklin Roosevelt died. There had been no others in the history of AP. And now, ding, 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 and EOS was pounding out. The president had been shot. You can't believe the goosebumps were that big on my arms.
What I remember when President Kennedy was assassinated, I was a math teacher at St. Thomas Aquinas in Jamaica Plain. One of the students said to me, someone tried to kill the president. And I said to him, oh, come on, Richard, and go take your seat. So I started to teach SAT preparation, and then I heard the TV in the next classroom. And so there was a swinging door between our classrooms, and I opened that door, and when I opened the door, I saw students just mesmerized, a few with tears running down their face, and I knew then something terrible had happened. And the sister in charge, Sister Grazian, of that room, she turned around to me, and she definitely was in tears, and she said, the president's been shot and it's serious.
They didn't know, at the time, they didn't know what was going on, other than the president was rushed to the hospital and he was pronounced dead, and there was a lot of confusion, and there was a lot of speculation that the Russians do it with some kind of a conspiracy.
All of a sudden, people were pouring into the newsroom, city room, from the street. Ordinary people were hearing it on car radios. They're coming in, they're crying, they're yelling at us, what's happening.
And I remember feeling that terrible first numbness, like this can't be happening. This is our country, we don't do these kind of things.
So we had to call the police over at Station 4. And cops came in, and we had a big rope, and we strung a rope across the newsroom and kept the crowd behind the rope so the staff could operate as the story broke and the story developed.
it seemed like the whole city shut down, more or less. Everybody was glued to a television or a radio, and just watching the whole thing as it unfolded, you know, and you couldn't walk down the street without someone coming up to you and asking you, what do you think? What do you think?
I happened to stand outside of the White House, and I was there all night long. This was on the Friday, and people were forming and people were coming because they knew the president's body would be taken to the White House. And I don't know, about 4 o'clock in the morning, it seemed like the president's body was carried to the White House. And I can still see the casket being brought in. I still remember it as if it were yesterday.
And then, of course, the funeral. And just that, I think I picture that famous picture of John with the saluting, and Carolyn trying to look under the flag to see her dad, and just those little children.
I can still hear the sound in my ears of the body being carried in the horse-drawn caisson from the Capitol, going down to Constitution Avenue. I was right there, military uniform, and thousands of people. But the sound of the drums, boom, 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 boom.
The thing that really got me, I'm not ashamed to say it, is when they folded the flag, when the honor guard folded the flag and walked over and handed it to his wife. That got me. I really did. I almost, tears came. It felt like somebody hurt my country. Bam, just like a gut shot to me, anyway.
Because he was so young. We were young. You know, John W. McCormick was Speaker of the House. Jack Kennedy was president. It was a time for young people, and young people don't die.
You know, he kind of belonged to us. He belonged to the country, but in a special way, belonged to people from Massachusetts, Bostonians particularly. We knew that we had seen him in person at one time or another.
But it was just an extraordinary period of time for people who saw this dramatic change taking place in the United States, the first Irish Catholic president elected. And it seemed like all the challenges and the discrimination and the barriers were torn down, and then all of a sudden it all ended.
Well, I was thinking too, you know, that asked not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Did he have any idea what he was going to have to do for his country? Of course he didn't, but you know, made the ultimate sacrifice.